She was the wild voice of a generation. Yet behind the electric stage lights, Janis Joplin's world held secrets few ever saw. In the heart of San Francisco, her unassuming home became a quiet witness to tender romances, soaring fame, and private struggles. This was where the blues rock queen balanced raw vulnerability with her larger-than-life persona. Explore the intimate corners of Joplin's life, her loves, her fortune, and the shocking end that stunned the music world. First, let's talk about Janis Joplin's death. On the evening of Sunday, October 4th, 1970, Janis Joplin was discovered dead in her room at the Landmark Motor Hotel in Los Angeles. Her body was found on the floor by her road manager and close friend, John Byrne Cook, who had arrived that night concerned for her well-being. Reports noted the presence of alcohol in her room, but early newspaper accounts indicated no other drugs or paraphernalia were visible at the scene, leaving the circumstances of her death initially shrouded in ambiguity. Later investigations, however, added a more complex layer to the story. According to a 1983 book co-authored by Joseph DeMona and Los Angeles County Coroner Dr. Thomas Noguchi, evidence of narcotics had been removed from the scene by a friend of Joplin, only to be returned later after it became clear an autopsy would reveal their presence. Noguchi explained that he had seen similar situations in other fatal drug overdoses across Los Angeles, where friends initially removed narcotics as a misguided attempt to protect or shield the deceased, then reconsidered and restored the evidence. Dr. Noguchi performed the autopsy and concluded that the official cause of Joplin's death was a heroin overdose, with alcohol possibly exacerbating its lethal effects. John Byrne Cook, reflecting on the incident, noted that Joplin had likely ingested heroin far more potent than what she and her circle of Los Angeles users had previously encountered. A conclusion supported by reports that several other customers of the same dealer also overdosed that weekend. The death was ultimately ruled accidental. The events leading up to Joplin's final hours reveal a striking mix of personal disappointment and solitude. On Friday, October 2nd, the evening before her death, two of her closest companions, Peggy Caserta, a lifelong friend, and Seth Morgan, her fiancé, failed to meet her at the Landmark Motor Hotel as she had expected. According to Caserta, Joplin was visibly saddened that neither friend arrived to keep her company. During the following 24 hours, Caserta did not reach out to explain her absence, only attempting to contact the hotel late on Saturday night. By then, Joplin had instructed the desk clerk not to accept incoming calls for her after midnight, effectively isolating herself in her final hours. Morgan did speak with Joplin by telephone sometime within that day, but details of the conversation remain scarce. Biographer Myra Friedman notes that Joplin also used a phone at Sunset Sound Recorders during the same period, where colleagues, some 20 to 25 in number, observed that the exchange left her extremely upset. Peggy Caserta has long contested the narrative of an accidental overdose, suggesting that Joplin's death might have been influenced by an injury sustained earlier that night. Caserta claimed that Joplin had suffered a head wound when the hourglass heel of her slingback sandal caught in the hotel's shag carpet, causing her to lose balance. While Caserta maintained that this incident could have contributed to Joplin's demise, she conceded that drugs and alcohol likely accelerated the fatal outcome. Following her death, Joplin was cremated at Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park and Mortuary in Los Angeles. In accordance with her wishes, her ashes were scattered from a plane into the Pacific Ocean, allowing her spirit to return to the vast, open landscapes that so often inspired the raw, emotive power of her music. In the aftermath, her passing left a profound void in the music world. A talented, wild, and unforgettable voice silenced far too soon, her legacy immortalized in both her recordings and the tragic circumstances of her final hours. Are you curious about Janis Joplin's personal life? Janis Joplin's romantic and intimate relationships were as intense and tumultuous as her stage performances, reflecting both her fiery personality and the turbulent emotional currents that shaped her life. Among her significant relationships with men were Peter DeBlanc, the singer-songwriter who shared both creative and personal intimacy with her, Country Joe McDonald, who wrote the song Janis at her personal request, David George Niehaus, Chris Christopherson, and Seth Morgan, a writer with whom Joplin was reportedly engaged from July 1970 until her death. These relationships were marked by passion, artistic connection, and often the volatility brought on by the rock and roll lifestyle and substance use. Joplin's romantic interests were not limited to men. During her first San Francisco period in 1963, she met and briefly lived with Jay Whittaker, whom she encountered while playing pool at the bar Gino and Carlo in North Beach. Their relationship ended when Whittaker grew frustrated with Joplin's hard drug use and her simultaneous sexual involvements with other people. Whittaker's identity in connection with Joplin only became publicly known in 1999, when Alice Eccles's biography Scars of Sweet Paradise was published, highlighting the singer's complex early experiences with intimacy. A particularly significant and enduring relationship was Joplin's on-again, off-again romantic involvement with Peggy Caserta. The two met in November 1966 when Big Brother and the Holding Company performed at The Matrix in San Francisco. Caserta, one of only 15 people in the audience, ran Menasidika, a clothing boutique in Haight-Ashbury. Joplin visited the boutique about a month later, claiming she could not afford a $5 pair of jeans and offering a 50-cent down payment. Caserta, surprised that such a talented singer could be so financially constrained, gave her the jeans for free. Their friendship remained platonic for more than a year, even as Caserta navigated her own romantic feelings for Big Brother guitarist Sam Andrew, who ultimately did not want a serious relationship. Joplin, ever empathetic, comforted Caserta through her disappointment, cementing the foundation for their eventual romantic bond. By the time of Woodstock in August 1969, both Joplin and Caserta had become intravenous heroin users. In September 1970, Joplin introduced Caserta to her fiancé, Seth Morgan, at the Landmark Motor Hotel in Los Angeles. Caserta had seen Morgan in San Francisco but had never met him. A plan for a threesome was briefly considered, but Caserta immediately withdrew upon realizing Morgan would be involved. Unaware of each other's decisions, Joplin and Morgan were left disappointed, a situation that contributed to the singer's sense of isolation in her final days. The next day, Caserta saw Joplin briefly while accommodating Joplin's new acquaintance, 19-year-old aspiring drummer Debbie Nutiforo. The meeting, reportedly tense and unpleasant, seemed to reflect Joplin's frustration with her friend's absence and the pressures of her lifestyle, particularly her dependency on heroin. Joplin's sexuality and persona were boldly uninhibited. In a revealing conversation with Richard Hundgen, the Grateful Dead's San Francisco-based road manager, on July 11, 1970, she dismissed rumors about her being exclusively homosexual, claiming she had been intimate with a couple of thousand cats in her life and a few hundred chicks. This blunt assertion highlighted both her sexual confidence and her rejection of societal labels. Joplin's outward expression of individuality extended beyond her relationships. Her body art, including a wristlet and a small heart tattooed on her left breast by San Francisco tattoo artist Lyle Tuttle, marked an early embrace of tattoos as legitimate cultural expression. Her flamboyant hairstyles, often adorned with scarves, beads, and feathers, became part of her public signature, signaling the fusion of her music, image, and defiant spirit. Underlying all of Joplin's relationships was a profound struggle with identity and acceptance. Biographer Myra Friedman noted that ridicule and humiliation during Joplin's early teens, combined with difficulties in navigating sexual and emotional development, left her with a diffused sense of self, lacking a cohesive center, yet exploding with emotional intensity. Her substance use, her fierce sexuality, and her often chaotic love life were in many ways intertwined, reflecting both her creativity and her vulnerability. Through all of it, Joplin remained an icon of raw honesty, defiance, and unfiltered passion, leaving a lasting impact not only on music, but on the cultural understanding of freedom, sexuality, and artistic expression. Now, let's talk about Janis Joplin's notable properties. Among the many addresses associated with Janis Joplin during her transformative years in San Francisco, one stands out as the clearest and most documented. 122 Lyon Street, apartment number 3, located in the heart of the Haight-Ashbury district. This modest flat, tucked amid the bustling bohemian streets that would come to define the counterculture of the late 1960s, served as Joplin's primary residence during a period of extraordinary artistic growth and personal exploration. Official documentation, including her 1960s driver's license and corroborating references in multiple biographies, confirms that this apartment was, for all intents and purposes, her home base in the city. The Lyon Street apartment was more than a simple place to sleep. It was a nucleus of social and creative activity. Joplin shared the space at times with Country Joe McDonald, the musician and activist known for his work with Country Joe and the Fish. Their cohabitation reflected both a practical arrangement, sharing rent and resources, and a creative synergy. McDonald later recalled the flat as a space alive with the music, energy, and unpredictability of the Haight-Ashbury scene, where artists, musicians, and seekers of every stripe converged. For Joplin, 122 Lyon Street was a sanctuary amid the chaos of her touring schedule, her growing fame, and the intoxicating swirl of drugs, music, and youthful idealism that defined the neighborhood. Documentary evidence and oral histories consistently identify Lyon Street as Joplin's anchor in San Francisco, even as she drifted between other nearby addresses. The Haight was notorious for its fluid communal living arrangements. Residents frequently moved between flats, crash pads, and temporary rentals, reflecting both economic necessity and the countercultural ethos of shared experience. Joplin was no exception. Contemporaneous Haight histories and local accounts indicate that she utilized several houses and apartments in the area while actively performing and engaging with the San Francisco music scene, yet 122 Lyon Street remained her primary residence and is the address most consistently tied to her in official records. The apartment itself, while modest, bore witness to Joplin's evolving identity as both a musician and a cultural icon. Within its walls, she honed her stagecraft, wrote lyrics, and entertained friends who would become part of her enduring narrative. The Haight-Ashbury milieu provided an essential backdrop. The street itself was a microcosm of the wider 1960s counterculture, with its cafes, record shops, and vibrant gatherings offering both inspiration and temptation. For Joplin, living on Lyon Street meant immersion in this world of creative experimentation, social upheaval, and sometimes perilous excess. Another one is Victorian apartment building associated with Janis. Situated just a short stroll from her better-documented Lyon Street apartment, this Victorian building has become synonymous with Joplin's presence in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood, embodying the eclectic energy, artistic ferment, and countercultural spirit of late 1960s San Francisco. Though multiple sources indicate that she moved frequently between apartments in the area, 635 Ashbury has been repeatedly highlighted in real estate write-ups, local histories, and press coverage as one of the residences she occupied or regularly visited. The building itself, a classic example of Haight-Ashbury Victorian architecture, exudes the charm and individuality that drew artists, musicians, and bohemians to the neighborhood during the height of the counterculture era. Its ornate facades, narrow staircases, and tall, airy rooms offered both the intimacy and creative space sought by young artists seeking independence from conventional domestic structures. For Joplin, 635 Ashbury provided a flexible environment where she could retreat from the demands of touring, develop her musical ideas, and immerse herself in the dynamic social life that defined the Haight scene. The proximity to Lyon Street meant that Joplin could easily maintain ties to her primary residence, while also taking advantage of the social and cultural opportunities offered by other apartments nearby. Historical accounts and oral histories of the Haight-Ashbury scene underscore the fluidity of living arrangements in the neighborhood. Residents frequently moved between apartments, shared space with friends or fellow musicians, and embraced a communal ethos that blurred the boundaries between private and public life. In this context, Joplin's association with 635 Ashbury fits a broader pattern. It was one of several units she occupied, a waypoint in a larger network of homes and crash pads that allowed her to navigate the demands of her burgeoning career, the temptations of the counterculture, and the occasional turbulence of personal relationships. Older sources often emphasize that she did not live exclusively in any one apartment for long stretches. Rather, her time at 635 Ashbury was one chapter in a nomadic yet creatively fertile San Francisco existence. Modern real estate promotions and local historical narratives, however, have crystallized the building's identity as the Janis Joplin apartment, highlighting its cultural significance and drawing attention to the city's enduring fascination with her life. Property listings repeatedly reference her connection, often describing the building as a historic touchstone of the Haight-Ashbury music scene. This contemporary framing serves both to commemorate Joplin's legacy and to situate 635 Ashbury as a tangible artifact of the 1960s counterculture, offering visitors and enthusiasts a concrete point of connection to the singer's storied past. The apartment's location in the heart of the Haight meant that Joplin was immersed in the vibrant tapestry of music, fashion, and social experimentation that defined the district. Cafes, record shops, and gathering spaces were all within walking distance, facilitating the spontaneous collaborations and encounters that energized her artistic development. Her presence in these apartments, including 635 Ashbury, exemplified the duality of her life at the time. She was simultaneously a private individual seeking refuge in small, intimate spaces, and a public figure whose life and personality were increasingly the subject of fascination. And of course, we can't ignore Janis Joplin's house at 112 Lyon Street. Among the many addresses associated with Janis Joplin in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, 112 Lyon Street holds a peculiar place, not as a verified residence, but as a frequent point of confusion in both local lore and popular memory. Situated just steps from her confirmed Haight apartment at 122 Lyon Street, 112. Lyon has long been cited, often erroneously, as Joplin's home during the late 1960s. The conflation of these two addresses illustrates the challenges of reconstructing the personal geography of a legendary figure whose life was intertwined with a neighborhood defined by fluidity, creativity, and myth-making. Official documentation, most notably Joplin's 1960s driver's license, confirms 122 Lyon Street as her primary Haight residence. She lived there during the height of her activity in the San Francisco music scene and shared the flat for periods with friends and fellow musicians, including Country Joe McDonald. Despite this clear record, local accounts and souvenir guides throughout the 1970s, 80s, and even 90s occasionally pointed to the adjacent building, 112 Lyon, as the singer's home. This misattribution likely arose from the physical proximity of the two buildings, the similarity of their facades, and the oral storytelling traditions that often amplified small details into widely accepted facts. Neighborhood lore played a significant role in perpetuating the confusion. Haight-Ashbury residents and tour guides, eager to connect visitors with the city's countercultural history, frequently referenced multiple Lyon Street addresses when recounting tales of Joplin's presence. In some cases, neighbors who remembered the young singer passing through or visiting friends' apartments may have assumed she lived next door, an understandable mix-up given the closely packed Victorian flats that characterize the street. Over time, these anecdotal claims were amplified by guidebooks, historical walking tours, and memorabilia sellers, embedding the misattribution into secondary sources and public imagination. The San Francisco Chronicle addressed the confusion in a mid-1990s correction, clarifying that while 112 Lyon had been widely cited, Joplin's official records list 122 Lyon as her residence. Subsequent reporting and historical accounts have reinforced this distinction, yet the error persists in certain souvenir literature and online histories. Scholars and biographers of Joplin note that such discrepancies are not uncommon for artists of her era, especially in a neighborhood as transient and experimental as Haight-Ashbury, where residents frequently moved between apartments, crash pads, and communal houses. The case of 112 Lyon also highlights the broader challenge of preserving cultural memory in neighborhoods defined by rapid social change. The Haight of the late 1960s was a hub for musicians, artists, and youth seeking alternative lifestyles. Buildings that housed these individuals often became sites of pilgrimage, their histories interwoven with rumor, anecdote, and fragmented documentation. For Joplin, the close-knit network of apartments on Lyon Street, combined with her own mobility and the communal ethos of the scene, made it easy for observers to conflate one address with another. The final chapter of Janis Joplin's life unfolded in room 105 of the Landmark Motor Hotel, located at 7047 Franklin Avenue in Hollywood, California, a modest, unassuming hotel that would become infamous for its association with her tragic death in October 1970. Today known as the Highland Gardens Hotel, the property occupies a prominent place in both popular and scholarly accounts of Joplin's final months, cited in guidebooks, Atlas Obscura entries, and a wide range of roadside history websites. Though it was a short-term hotel stay rather than a long-term residence, the Landmark Motor Hotel is frequently referenced as her last residence, reflecting the profound cultural and historical weight assigned to the place where her life ended. Room 105, a standard motel unit typical of Hollywood's mid-20th century motor hotels, served as Joplin's temporary refuge during the hectic final weeks of her life. Unlike her Haight-Ashbury apartments or Austin hangouts, this was not a creative or communal hub. It was a private space, small and contained, where the pressures of touring, recording, and personal struggle converged. The room itself has since been immortalized in popular culture, not for any architectural flourish, but for the sheer intensity of the events it witnessed, the end of a life defined by musical brilliance, emotional vulnerability, and the relentless pursuit of freedom and self-expression. Historical accounts and local guides underscore the dual nature of Joplin's stay. It was both practical and poignant. The Landmark provided a convenient, temporary base for a touring artist in Los Angeles, yet it also became a focal point for her private struggles. Friends, road managers, and biographers alike have emphasized that the hotel setting allowed her a measure of solitude, though it was solitude tinged with the consequences of substance use and personal disappointment. Room 105, though ordinary in structure, has been preserved in collective memory as a site of tragic significance, emblematic of the fraught intersection between fame, personal demons, and the itinerant lifestyle of rock musicians in the era. Joplin's tenure at the Landmark Motor Hotel highlights the transitory nature of many of her later residences. Unlike the Haight-Ashbury flats at 122 Lyon Street or her brief connections to other San Francisco apartments, the hotel was not a place where she developed long-term routines or cultivated creative collaborations. Instead, it represents the final stop in a pattern of temporary lodgings that accommodated her peripatetic existence. The hotel's documentation in guidebooks and online histories reinforces its symbolic status. It is a tangible landmark that allows admirers, historians, and fans to trace the literal and figurative path of her last days. The room's significance is further amplified by the narratives of those who were present or connected to her at the time. Friends and staff recall that Joplin's stay in room 105 was marked by both routine and unpredictability, with visitors coming and going and the intensity of her social and emotional life continuing to pulse even within the confines of the small hotel unit. This juxtaposition of ordinary space and extraordinary circumstance has made the Landmark Motor Hotel a key site in the study of her life and death, a locus where biography, legend, and memory converge. What do you think about Janis Joplin? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.